Živijo, tukaj je Anže, poslušate podcast Apparatus, kjer legitimni člani družbe povejo, kaj počnejo v življenju. Tole pa je 66. epizoda Apparatusa, v kateri sem govoril z Glennom Fleischmanom. To je človek, ki sicer dela podcaste, potem je urednik revije The Magazine, ki obstaja samo na iOS-u in na spletu, drugače pa piše tudi za The New York Times in pa za Economist. Pač še eden od unih, ki ne vem zakaj so rekli, ampak so. Rato je ful zanimiv pogovor, da se malo v medijih pogovarjali tudi o tem, da je on dvakrat zmagal kviz Jeopardy v Ameriki. Na koncu pa najboljši odgovor do zdaj na eno stvar, ki je zaznamovala njegovo življenje. Naprej začnemo, še enkrat ful hvala vsem, ki ste že podprli Apparatus tudi finančno. Če tega še niste naredili, pa bi radi, greste lahko na apparatus.si/podpri. Sem pa vesel kakršnega koli feedbacka, tako da mi težite na Twitterju oziroma na mailu anže@apparatus.si. Evo, zdaj pa Glenn. I guess we'll start.
Okay, I'm good. So I've been practicing. So let me try this. Anže Tomic.
Yeah, oh, that was close.
Good.
Tell
me, say it for me.
Okay, it's Anže Tomic.
Anže Tomic.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Anže Tomic.
Yeah, okay, that sounds bad.
I was practicing a Serbian accent because I did this radio play with the Incomparable where I was playing Nikola Tesla, and so I
heard that. Yes.
Yeah, so I listened to Serbians, and but it's funny. He apparently had a high pitched voice, and I try to do this low growly thing. So I know Slovenian is a different language than Serbian. However, I had a friend who was in Ljubljana for an exchange program, and he came back in high school and said, there are no obscenities in Slovenian. They have to borrow from Croatian to swear, to really swear.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth. Honestly, no,
I love that.
No, see, the profanities we do have are so lame. There's one where we basically just say, this is going to sound like we really are living in like the 1800s. We have one, the literal translation, well, it's the only translation. It's like 300 hairy bears.
Oh, yeah.
And that's supposed to be like a swear, I guess, or you're supposed to yell that at somebody that did something wrong.
Well, so Slovenian
makes no sense.
Is Slovenian a Slavic language? Does it belong to? It's not. It's,
yeah.
But Croatian is closer to Russian, as I understand, right? It's closer in the family because my understanding is Russian has. I read a book, an introductory Russian textbook once, and it said, "Do not attempt to swear in Russian." Because their mother curses are so severe, they are so far beyond what you think of as obscenities in English that you will offend people and you could even get hurt. And I was wondering if there's that split, if like Slovenian is more gentle and that Croatian is closer to Russian and has these extreme insults that you don't have available to you.
Well, sort of. The thing is like Serbia and Croatia, while the language is similar, Serbia is more of the Orthodox vein of Christianity and Croatia's Catholic. Mm-hmm. So, but it's the same language. So I get. Well, I say the same. Like if anybody here heard me say that, that would not go over well. Like you have a couple of words that you kind of have to be careful with. But yeah, it's basically the same. And Slovene is it's still a Slavic language, but ours pretty. Maybe unique's not the right word, but I'll put it to you like this: like we all understand Serbian and Croatian,
yes,
right, and they do not understand us. And it's not just the fact that we're smaller and stuff, and how Yugoslavia was structured. Our language is like it is different. Like it's kind of hard to explain. It's like a nuanced thing, but there's the difference is at least that big that it kind of gets lost on their end.
When I was in Switzerland a few times, not for huge periods of times, once for several weeks, and I know that's the thing. I meet people who speak Schweizerdeutsch in America, and I'll hear people speaking. I had 7 or 8 years of German, and I was fluent at one point, but I can still, in a pinch, I can speak it. I will start talking to someone, and actually the words will come back. And I'll be around Seattle, and I'll hear someone speaking, and I'm like, I should understand what they're saying, and I do not. And I'm a friendly guy. I'll say, "Excuse me, are you from Switzerland?" They'll say, "How do you know?" And I said, "Because you're speaking a language I feel like I should understand. I don't." And they laugh, and we talk about Lucerne or something like that. I was in Basel mostly, so in every city I don't know if this is true in Slovenia, every city in Switzerland just about really has a local dialect. You can't understand people from Basel cannot understand people from Lucerne and so forth, to an extent that I knew was true for in some countries for certain kinds of local dialect, but in Switzerland it's extreme, and they only have the official languages they learn in school and they use officially, but everyone really intensely speaks their local dialect, like their city dialect practically.
Yeah, well, it's not that bad here. There is a region here where I just, like, nobody understands those people. Like, it's the, no, seriously, like, I think it's the northeast of the country. You know what Slovenia looks like, because it looks like a chicken, basically.
Oh.
Right? So, no, seriously, just look it up in Google Maps. It looks like a chicken, but, you know.
I see what you mean. Oh, that's hilarious. I see what you mean.
Yeah, it really does. So the head part, right, where the beak is and everything, that's those people, I mean, when they talk to each other, I swear that just sounds like it's not Slovene. It's like it's on the border with Hungary. So it's sort of like has like Hungarian influences and stuff, but I just
and Hungarian is related to it's what the it's the Finnish relative, right?
Yeah, which is that's.
Oh god, I could talk all day about language. I'm like I don't know, called linguophile. I'm not a polyglot. I don't speak. I speak a little bit of a bunch of languages, and German best after English. But there's something about the persistence of dialect and language in the face of global culture and everything. I just think is like the ultimate human thing that we want to speak what our mother tongue is and we want to preserve it. I think it's great.
Yeah, well, you'd love us because there's 2 million. Slovenia is basically 2 million people, and we have a language that's. I mean, I do not wish anybody, I don't wish it on anybody to learn.
Oh,
it.
that's
It's
so funny.
insane.
Well, and then there's Romansh in Switzerland, which has I think only. What is it? There's like 30,000 native speakers, but it's an official Swiss language. It was preserved to get Graubünden in and so forth. But it's like this linguistic story of cultural hegemony.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's Europe's weird when you think about it. But like Slovene has the duality, So you have and we have 6 cases. So
That's not so bad. That's not so
Well,
bad.
yeah, it's
Icelandic is 29, I think. You can't learn Icelandic if you're not from there.
Well, yeah, but the Scandinavians are weird.
Crazy, yeah.
I talked about that with Merlin. That's just ridiculous.
It's too much.
Even the alphabet is just it just gets. I don't know. We're gonna talk about the O with the line through it again.
That's right. It's great. I don't know. It's just, but I think this is I think language is a way you express culture, and it gets preserved when the culture is being preserved, and vice versa. When languages die out or people lose that sort of cultural diversity and sort of blend together. I mean, America is this melting pot, and we all sort of speak the same. We all think we speak the same language, and occasionally, like I'll be in England and I'll think we're not really speaking the same language. We think we are because most of the words are the same, but culturally it's so different that we're not expressing the same concepts all the time. But we think we are. You can get huge misunderstandings from that too.
Yeah, and but over here, like the European Union. In the parliament, they want to preserve each language of all the member states, and it's gotten to this point where it's just ridiculous. You can just have translators all over the place in Brussels because everybody gets to talk in their own language, right? So it just gets weird because now the EU keeps expanding and just keep adding more people, and the parliament has 700 MPs, and then you have to have translators to kind of service all of that,
Oh, I kind of love
it
that.
Just
too,
gets
Lithuanian is the closest living language to Sanskrit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, linguists will go to, philologists will go to Lithuania because it's Indo-European, and it was left much more preserved in Lithuania than anywhere else. But Latvia and Estonia have languages that are much further off the tree. So Lithuania, for some reason, became slightly frozen. But there's a lot of things apparently in common with the structure of Sanskrit. It's just bizarre. You're like, or the Finnish-Hungarian thing. You're like, okay, the Finns. No, wait, where did the Magyars go? And but it tells a story of migration. They're using language almost like DNA to track where people went to. And I don't know. They did this. The New York Times, I think it was the most popular thing they published. I forget. In 2013, was this interactive thing. You would go in and you'd fill out this survey. It was based on some academic research. And you'd answer questions about what do you call a long sandwich on a roll, and do you call it a sack or a bag? And there's all these really cultural things. And at the end, it would say you're most likely from this area. And I filled it out, and I live in Seattle. I grew up mostly on the West Coast, and it said, you're from upstate New York. And my parents both grew up in upstate New York. I haven't lived there since I was 3, but apparently I talk like my parents. I mean, it was within like 100-mile radius of.
Oh no, it's like an area, not just upstate New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they would put a map with like a heat map that would show, and I thought this is crazy. And some people reported it being, giving them a broad area, and other people were like, this is practically the city I was born in.
Oh wow!
Like, how does this work? Because we don't think of ourselves in America. We know there's like people will say pop in one part of the country and soda in another, or sack and bag, or grinder, hoagie, Subway, poor boy, like they're all words for sandwiches. Like we have all these things, but we think like, oh, isn't that cute? It's like spanner and flashlight in England and America. But in fact, there's a whole array of regional typifiers that they were able to use to actually get you to that tiny an area. It was really interesting. So it was a very interesting thing for the New York Times to do, because it was one of their most popular features in 2013, and it wasn't writing; it was an interactive test almost that surprised people.
Oh, I'm gonna find a link to that, because that sounds okay. Okay, so now I'm gonna give you my first question.
I'm very murder-like.
Okay, so my first question is always the same. So, who are you and what do you do after 12 minutes?
Well, I'm Glenn Fleischman. I think of myself still as a freelance writer, but I'm really largely a publisher and editor these days. I was a writer, and I still am a writer for over 20 years, doing technology stuff, and I program in some scripting languages, and I build systems. And right now, I guess the thing I do most is put out the magazine, which was founded by Marco Arment, and he sold it to me several months ago, and I've been working we did a Kickstarter to put out a book of some of the best stuff we put out in our electronic issues, and also write for The Economist, and I dabble in other stuff too. Still do some programming, but mostly a writer, largely an editor, I guess.
Yeah, and that, publishing is one of those things I sort of like to talk to you about, because the magazine is, the magazine shouldn't work in my head like that. It shouldn't sort of be like viable, I guess, because when Marco said at the start what he was gonna do, I just could not wrap my head around that. And maybe that's because I'm from around here where like there's not a critical mass of people, that would actually pay for and the articles are great, by the way, but that would pay for that.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but I just could not. So I just wanted to before you're the publisher now, but even before Marco sold it, sold the magazine to you, how did you see that? Was it like an experiment, or did you know it kind of had legs, as you guys like to say?
I still think it's an experiment. I mean, it's not. I want to say I've been blunt about it at times. It's not like. In its early times, it was very successful initially, and then we sort of settled down, and it's been a hard row to hoe, as we also say here. I want to say it's not like massively profitable, and it's this wonderful thing that works perfectly. It's more like I'm still testing out ideas. Like one of the issues is the critical mass you mentioned. It's an issue. There's X 100 million people with iOS devices who speak English, and many of them as a primary language, and some as a secondary. So conceivably, we're on sale in like almost every store, and we have subscribers in, I don't know, I think I have 15 or 18 iTunes stores have got subscribers in. So conceivably, even if it was just Americans and Canadians and Australians and people in England, which is where most of our subscribers are, that's a huge audience. But the disconnect continues to be, how do we people get this thing I want to call subscription or subscriber fatigue. Like they subscribe and they read a bunch of issues and they forget to read it. Maybe they come back and then they're like, oh, there's so much unread, and I've read all this kind of stuff. I don't need to subscribe to this anymore. It's $2 a month, and so I'm done. And that's totally understandable. And I do that as a subscriber to publications too. So you get a churn. People leave because they, even if they really like the publication, it's just not what they want to read and pay for anymore. And charging people $2 a month is an ongoing thing, and Apple notifies them before they're billed every month. So part of the issue of running a publication like this first was initially attracting a ton of people. Done. Easy. It was very successful. Next is replacing those people constantly, and that is actually a real challenge, is figuring out how to market and find new people when the spotlight isn't on this as a new venture. And so I've been trying a lot of different things. The book was one thing, and that brought in a different, slight overlap, but a different audience, and a bunch of money to produce a really nice book. But it wasn't massively profitable either. It was really to fund development and make the book and have something to sell after the Kickstarter campaign. We were working with Medium, which was they pay for content based partly on readership, and that's been a way to try different kinds of things that we haven't put in issues. And I keep looking for other ways to not be totally beholden to Apple and the iTunes store, including, we sell subscriptions directly to the website that you can use in the app. But it's not, what your question about, how is this viable is a great one, because it's not a slam dunk. Here's the big thing, I think, is there are certainly publications that they have a print version and they have a marketing arm, and they have, maybe they get 20 million people a month to their website. And when they do an e-publication, they've maybe largely or entirely paid already for all the content that's in it, and they're republishing it. And they already have a programming staff, and they already have a way to say, hey, you like us in print or you like our website, get the app too. We have none of that. And that over time has proven to be a real difficulty when we've got no way to market ourselves outside of the app itself and our website. And so that's an ongoing challenge. So I don't know how it'll end, because it's still an experiment, but I'm still trying, shifting sums of money around and trying different variables and just seeing what clicks with people to keep them on board and get new people on board.
Yeah, but see, it's interesting you mentioned because I'm the online editor for a magazine here now. That's my job now. That's
great.
That's sort of what that's why I want to talk to you about this stuff some more. And but it's interesting because you mentioned that. I always sort of had the feeling that if you have a print magazine, that's always going to be sort of like baggage in the online world. Even if you do just the app for the magazine or stuff like that. But the way you just described it sort of makes the existing infrastructure of print media sort of does help in the online world as well. And is that fair to say, or?
I think so. I think it's a marketing engine. So there's this problem in America, which I think is probably different in every other country. Is there's this group that audits magazine circulation, so that advertisers can confirm that the rate they're paying based on readership is accurate. And it's a group, I think, owned by and run by publications, but it's generally considered very honest. I think they've had some conflicts about numbers in the past, but it has to work. And if it didn't work, advertisers would be upset and they would take their money elsewhere, or they would start their own group or whatever. So this audit group, I think it's still called the Audit Bureau of Circulation, something, or was called that. They insist that a digital version of a publication, in order to be counted, is a digital replica. It has to be almost exactly like the print version, which is a huge constraint and a huge mistake. And I think it's been a fundamental problem with the development of magazine apps from print publications, is because they are beholden to the ad rates in print, which are still lucrative compared to online. They can't afford to break that model, so they don't do something revolutionary. You'll see this with The Atlantic came out, and I don't know how this app is doing at all, but they came out with an app that was very The Magazine-like and very much like other stuff. And I don't feel like they were copying, but I think they were going native week, something like publication that content. There's some original, some archive, some from their blog. And the idea there, I think, was it was not beholden. It was stuff that was mostly published so they could have a new format in which to deliver it to people who wanted a curated small set of stuff to read, which is one value proposition of the magazine, is we're not endless. We're a small set of things to read, and that's actually an advantage. But so the Atlantic, by having an app version that's their digital replica of their magazine, they have that, and then they have another thing that's, I have to believe, is an experiment. It doesn't cost as much money to feed, and it breaks them out of that, and they can have separate revenue and advertising for it without changing that audited relationship. And so that's, I think, a specific American problem. I do not know if even in Canada, maybe in Canada they do, because we have a lot of overlap with publication distribution. But that's been an issue. For years, I did not understand why people didn't break out of their print replica, and that's it. That explains so much. And I don't know why I didn't know this until a few months ago. But it's also, it constrains innovation, because you have to, all these publications have to have an app, and because if they're ad driven, they have to have one that's like the magazine in print or the newspaper, whatever. It constrains their ability to try new and different things. And then at some point, it'll change, because they will need to do new and different things. The print revenue will decline enough. The app version will not do well enough, and they will have to suddenly do quite different things to find a path forward.
See, and okay, the quite different things, right? That quote. And I know that's a jerky question, basically. But what? I'm not looking for a definitive answer because everybody's sort of trying to figure this stuff out. But what does that mean? That's as clear as I can make that question.
Well, no, it's so they're when the first iPad apps came out for publications, people were like, oh my gosh, look at what Wired's doing. And what Wired did is they essentially took something that was like a PDF. It was Adobe produced, and they put a couple interactive elements in it. And I found the navigation sort of horrible, and I didn't feel like it took any native advantage of the fact that you're on a computing device. It was a representation of a print thing in digital form, and they tried to do as much within that constraint. So the reason the magazine got attention when Marco released it wasn't the first, but it was maybe because it came from him and because of his connection to owning Instapaper, and maybe because people were dying to see something different. This idea of something that was completely broken from the constraints of the past. And there was no print component to be beholden to. There was no revenue stream to be beholden to. People seized on it. And they said, "Oh, this could be the future of publications in mobile devices and browsers." It was seen as it's an iPad app, and of course it was more, and it was a website and whatever. But it was Craig Maud wrote this great essay called Subcompact Publishing.
Oh, yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, he spells it all out, and it's funny because Marco came out with it, then Craig wrote that, and it was like, oh, now, I had some ideas about it, now I understand it, and Craig is really influenced by thinking about this too, and it's not that this new format is the only one or the most successful path forward, but it gets away. It tries to take advantage of the fact that you've got a multimedia device that's highly suitable for reading now because you have high DPI displays. So it's like paper. It's bright enough. You have battery life. You have all the things that make for a great reading experience, but you have things that are essentially a PDF in app form. So the magazine was, no, this is somewhere more like a web page. It's HTML5 is what drives all the pages in the magazine. It's more like a web page, but with parameters set to make it the best reading experience that the designer of the app thinks he can make in this case. So everything was optimized around the reader and the subscriber. Easy subscription. You can run it on multiple devices, a finite amount of content, even though it was being delivered as a periodical, that was partly for convenience instead of continuously publishing, which overwhelms people. Little quanta of, magazines. Every 2 weeks something will come out, and there'll be at least a few interesting things in there for you to read. Even some of the swiping behavior, everything about it wasn't designed to put other stuff in front of you than the thing you wanted to read. Everything was designed to get out of the way so that you could read and to deliver stuff to you in a way that you didn't have to manage or cope with. And I think all of that was very powerful. So the related part of that is there's no ads in the magazine, so it's 100% beholden to subscribers, and that's great and bad. It means there's no other party. The consumer, the reader, is not a product. The consumer is, we have a relationship. They're a patron. And I've pitched it that way, and I think it's true, is that when you subscribe to a publication that has no advertising, you are the patron. If there's no other money coming in, you're the person. If you don't subscribe, then that bit of money doesn't help defer the costs and doesn't continue it. So, over time, I've pitched it a little more like that. It's a for-profit venture, and I'm not walking out with my pockets comically bulging with coins. It's like I say, it's an experiment. And I have different lines of revenue for my own personal making a living, but it's a very direct thing. Now, I'm not opposed to having advertising or sponsorship if it made sense and if I could have the right people where I wasn't I didn't have to structure it to bombard the reader, and I felt it was a value to them that, on podcasting, I've got sponsors on my podcast, and I like having them because I feel like it's not just the money part, which makes it possible for me to devote time and hire an audio engineer and some expense if I need to travel or have some audio. It actually underrates my ability to produce what I think is a podcast every week that has a certain kind of thing. So that's great. But the other part is I feel like having sponsors, most of them have an offer for the audience. So I feel like I've got an audience that may need web hosting. If these guys are going to give 25% off, that's a win for my audience because they're going to buy it anyway. I'm not convincing them to buy a hula hoop. I'm giving them access to something they may already know or not know they need, but it's part of what they do for business. And so if I could find the same thing for the magazine, where there were sponsors that were in line with what I thought the readers did. So I'm not selling them crap, but I'm giving them access to interesting things. It'd be possible. And that changes a patronage relationship too, but I really do think of in this model. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question right. It's like a set of other things.
No, but that's sort of okay. So just one more thing I want to touch on, because you said because it is still a periodical. It's not a continuous, but like the stuff doesn't. Yeah, but when you said it becomes overwhelming, I sort of agree with that. But I think that's a fairly new thing. That's a really very internet thing, that it feels like now. If something shows up on your doorstep that's really thick and you have to read it, right? That's sort of, that didn't exist before. Like, that was the magazine. That was the whole point of it. You subscribed to a magazine and you got it to your door, and then you'd read the whole thing. Well, maybe not the whole thing, but the parts you actually liked. And, that's how you got your information. And I don't know how to reconcile that with the internet age, where you're constantly bombarded with like articles. Let's set quality aside, but like when you said it overwhelms people, like, does the bi-weekly thing sort of work, or is there like even a better way of doing that stuff, or maybe a continuous thing is better? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm in the same boat about that question as you are. So there's this thing called completism, and I wrote something on my blog a year ago about it. So I've written for The Economist for almost a decade, and one of my editors there, Tom Standage, who has written a bunch of books, and he's the digital editor now, and he wrote a book called Writing on the Wall. It's a 2,000-year history of social media, and it's fascinating because he finds Facebook-like things in Roman times. It's really a good read, like how letters were distributed and copied and commented on and whatever. So he's got this deep bench of how he thinks about contemporary digital stuff, and I'd heard this term before, and he introduced me more deeply to it. And completism is it describes readers who feel that whatever they have access to, they have to read all of. And there are some people like that and some not. And so you probably know people who read Twitter and people who surf Twitter. And I have friends, like my friend Lex Friedman, who I always call out because I like to make fun of him about this, even though it's perfectly reasonable behavior. He has a limit on the number of people he can follow because he reads every tweet. Or he scans them, but he looks through it. He cannot skip over them. And I cannot do that. I follow, 2,000 people, 1,000 people, and I will run back in the feed a little bit. I'll look. Sometimes there's somebody I know, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on with my friend Leah Reich publishes on Medium in her own collection. She publishes a Year of Wednesdays. It's this essay project she has. And I'm like, it's Wednesday morning. I don't see the link, so I will search on her thing and like, there's the link. That's great. So I'll do that. It's not like I'll go, okay, I didn't get it, so the link is gone forever. But I don't read Twitter. And I think this is actually a great parallel to how people consume publications. And it also is why people are disabled by the internet and overwhelmed by it, and why others are like, it's fine, I go in and out, or whatever, or somewhere in between. So Twitter isn't curated, it's curated by yourself. And so some people have to self-curate it, or there's one person, this really lovely person, who she responds to tweets from 12 to 24 hours ago. She reads it, and she gets behind, and I'll be like, what is that about? I'm like, we are way past talking about that. So sometimes I respond to her, but other times I'm like, that was like a day ago. So you're out of sync that way too, and you feel compelled. And I'm not an expert on obsessive compulsive behavior, but I believe having to read every tweet your Twitter stream feels obsessive compulsive. Because why? What benefit? People feel like they're going to miss something. So with a publication, the notion of completism is this comes up with the Economist app, and this is what Tom was telling me about, and I wrote about it a bit, and it comes up with the magazine very specifically too, is the Economist publishes hundreds of blog posts a week. They are not in the app. They're not in the app because if they were in the app, it would drive the completist crazy. And The Economist has a lot of completist readers because it's the kind of thing that people made a point of reading. Like, you get it, you read the whole thing. It's not that huge. It's big, but it's not that huge. Some people read The Economist cover to cover every week, or it stacks up like The New Yorker. So that's an issue when you design an app. And I don't think I think Marco hadn't anticipated it, and I certainly did not understand it until into it. I have people who say, I really don't read that much. I subscribe to the app, and 5 articles every 2 weeks is too much, and I'm way behind. And I say, you don't have to read the old articles. They're like, yeah, but I paid for them. I want to get caught up. And I'm like, you'll never get caught up. We all die someday. You will never, like, I am a cast things aside, not people, not friendships, not love, not any of that, not family, but it's like I am this thing from 20 years ago I have not looked at in 20 years. I found it in a box in the basement. It is going to be donated or recycled or thrown away because it is now a dead thing of the past. And some people don't live that way. And I think it extends in different realms in their lives. And it's something you have to factor in as a publisher. I certainly did not understand from day one or, day 180. It took me months to really get that that's part of what you have to think about.
Yeah, because that never occurred to me also. Like, because I'm sort of the same way. I don't really have a problem with, missing stuff on Twitter or, just not reading the whole RSS feed. That I'm not one of those guys. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly something to think about when it's a periodical. Because, I mean, I guess the question, at least that's what it seems like to me, is what do you put into the app? If you have even if you have a print publication, or if it's not even a print publication, but like what actually goes into the app?
Well, think about the design. Like Twitter is all encompassing for some people, and they have to leave it entirely, or it may take over their life as a result. Or publications that push out stuff. I mean, the New York Times pushes out constant updates. Like the continuous news cycle is bad for some readers, and maybe is it 40%? Is it 90%? I don't know, and I have not read research about it, and I would be curious for whom the cycle is actually bad.
Yeah, well, the New York Times is like a real extreme because they just churn out stuff all that. I mean, I've never been like in their offices, but I just imagine there's like 30,000 people in there because there's no way you can output that much, basically, at least to my eyes. But okay, so with the magazine, so let's go to a concrete example. When you said you have to like keep up with the churn of subscribers,
yes.
Like how have you found? See, I don't want to get into numbers because I think that sort of derails the conversation. But like the attrition rate, like, have you been surprised by it, or is it, or it over the long term has it become like a natural thing where you just it's like peaks and valleys and you just sort of you go with the flow basically?
Well, I'll be completely honest. It's actually been all downhill, but we started for such a high point that we have an ebb and flow. So we have some number of people coming in each month and more going out. And we started with so much excitement, a lot of people coming on because it was an experiment, and so it's the ongoing issue is finding people who haven't heard about us and getting them in, or bringing back people who left and want to come back after being away. And it's a very God, I mean, this is true in every realm. There's so many things crying for attention. We are a tiny, tiny voice in there. And I think one of the faults with what happened with the magazine, one of the reasons why I say it's still an experiment, it's not like a thriving business that was, I'll be here in 10 years, is, and I don't know what'll happen, is that the focus was too general, and Marco was focused, and I don't blame Marco, and I took it over with the same attitude in mind, is Marco was focused on the magazine experience and the kind of stuff he wanted to read that he didn't feel was being written about everywhere. And then when I came on as editor around issue 2, we started to broaden it into reporting right away because it's hard to get enough unique essays that you can't read the same kind of thing being discussed everywhere on the net and for free. So reporting allows you to get more unique insight, and we sought out essays from people that had, the more, I want to say offbeat, but things to talk about that weren't discussed all the time, or interesting points of view, or lovely methods of expression. And but if we had said we are the journal about antique stuff, antique tech, we're the retro tech journal of curiosity, and we're going to cover typewriters and fountain pens and whatever. I actually think at some level, like that's not letterpress and whatever, and we've done some of that. I don't think that's sustainable as a biweekly publication. However, it would have given us an easy way to reach a potential audience. We would have had conference or events to go to, and groups to join, and things to sponsor, and places to advertise, and keywords. Anytime someone searches for, a Corona Royal on Google, we could say, you like Corona Royals, you know what? There's a magazine for you. We talk about that and more. Because we're a general magazine, it is, I'm going to say, and anybody listening who's got a marketing background is going to say I'm way too naive or inexperienced. Although I've worked in marketing at different points, but internet only, really. The problem is it's almost impossible to find a place to that we can afford to advertise or sponsor or market to that reaches a general audience that might be interested. Because we're essentially competing against Wired. We don't write about the same exact set of things. We don't have all the departments or the heft or whatever. And part of our appeal is that we are smaller. But we are looking for a sort of geeky audience that's interested in general things. And Wired focuses more specifically on contemporary technology and privacy and so forth. We focus more generally on storytelling that involves, old tech, new tech, some aspect of geekery. So we have a different focus, but our audience has a very strong overlap. We cannot afford to market to Wired's audience. Wired's part of a giant multinational
Condé Nast.
And they have reciprocal advertising in other publications. They have a website that publishes blog entries and new articles. They have they spend conventional marketing. I get flyers. They have in America, The Economist, there are like giant banners everywhere for The Economist, for instance. And we feel like I write for the Technology Quarterly section, and some of what we do has a very neat overlap with what The Economist sells in that section. So I think one of our fundamental problems, and the reason that subscriptions have been so difficult, is not that, I'm not saying we always fire on all cylinders and that we produce a perfect publication every issue that everyone should read, every article in, and they're all perfect. It's like, no, we're a small group, and we try to do as best we can. I think we publish really interesting stuff. We have great writers, and we work really hard at it. So I'm not trying to say, we're at the, $50 million publication level. We're not. We're small and so forth. But I think we do a very consistent and good job on the editorial side and what we offer in offering interesting new things to read about. That said, that doesn't help on the marketing side because even with 500 million people who might be subscribers, reaching them, it just costs us 100 times as much as if we'd had a focus. I think, like I say, I don't know what the focus would be, but if we had figured out a niche that had an area that could be well-defined for online advertising or for podcasts. Let's say we had decided we are a magazine for programmers. Anything programmers are interested in. I know it's, again, a bizarre idea. But let's say anything programmers are interested in. We're going to talk a little bit about coding, but we're going to talk about stuff that's interesting to programmers without being about programmers. And Marco's initial thrust was that, stuff interesting to geeks without necessarily always being about technology. So if we've done that, I know how to reach programmers. There's podcasts I can advertise. There's keywords. There's websites and it's mostly affordable because the audiences are small, and we could pay small amounts and get returns. So that's our fundamental issue: is we're so general. It's very hard to afford the marketing to reach the audience that we think could become subscribers.
Yeah, see, that's not a problem that exists over here. That's what I keep every American or British person I talk to, in my podcast, sort of says that there's like what you said, you basically have to sort of find a niche or a focus, right? Mm-hmm. But you see, that only works when you have 300 million people talking the same language.
No, I know. That's the thing is, right, you haven't, I was talking to a group that's trying to launch a regional publication in print and online at the same time in a very focused, city area. And I'm like, I wasn't saying you're guaranteed success, but there's nothing like it there. And they have a sufficient audience, and they can reach all those people almost directly. They have the means through community groups and so forth. Their marketing, it's not that it's easy, but they have a very defined audience they can see around them. They can walk the streets and see all their potential readers. And I have a large audience, and I'm such a tiny, tiny fish. That's really the problem.
Yeah, that's, man. I wish we could have those problems over here. But
I know, but...
yeah. No, but seriously, that all falls away when you have 2 million people, right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole population. Then when you factor out the people that aren't online, I think that drops to about 1.5 million, or maybe 1,400,000. Mm-hmm. Now, take out all of the really young people, even if we want to do a general publication, that's pretty much all you can do.
Right.
It has to have more than there's no niches here. I talked to this with Mike Hurley. He does a podcast about pens.
I love him.
Which is insane. He just said, you have to find your niche. And I'm like, dude, the niche here is 17 people. I can't.
Hence, we're talking in English right now. I see. That's an interesting notion. That means you have to find stuff of much more general interest, right? That everything has to appeal to a much larger audience, or you won't get a big enough audience, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And then as soon as you start doing that, I'm in the same boat as you are. I'm competing against like people that actually have like a marketing department and all of that stuff.
Right.
And it just gets weird. That's why I sort of love hearing you guys talk about stuff like this, and I just like slowly get angry when you do it.
That's why I say the contrary thing is, this is a funny thing. When you have an audience that's potentially enormous and you can't reach it, it's not any better than having a tiny audience that doesn't sustain you, because you're in the same boat. It's just that I feel like, there actually are not literally enough people to do what you might want to do in a specific area. I know there are enough people and I can't reach them, so I have a different kind of frustration. But it's not necessarily. But it's positionally, it's like maybe I can crack the nut. And I realize in your case, cracking the nut is not possible because you don't have a big enough audience. In my case, maybe I can figure it out and figure out how to reach that larger one.
Yeah, but the thing that doesn't work over here, if you go by topic, right? If you find like a niche topic, you can't really do that. But in terms of like the format you present your stuff in, like I do podcasts here now, it's a whole network. We have like 6 shows now. Mm-hmm. And like I think that was sort of a new thing here. So we are building a fairly large sized audience now. But I do a podcast about something like The Incomparable with a stand-up comic friend of mine, but he kind of has some mainstream success. And I do another one with a professional basketball player who's actually well known here, like properly well known. And you sort of, there are workarounds, but as far as the topic of the thing is, I can't do a show about pens. I just or maybe antique tech. Like there would be literally 7 people here that would listen to that.
That's an interesting. This is why and again, expanding into English is a great thing as a result. But so how do you plan? Then a lot of what you have to do has to be for love, right? Is you can't count on revenue. You could have really loyal people listening or reading, but you can't count that it'll be supportable.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We do stuff that's a little bit broader, I guess, and we do have like a PayPal subscription thing up, and I've been blown away by like the support we've gotten. Honestly, I wish more people would, but because you see, and that's another thing over here. Like not a hell of a lot of people have a credit card. Where we weren't. Yeah, no, seriously, that's
I didn't realize that.
I keep getting emails like I'd like to give you money, basically, but I don't have a credit card, so I can't use PayPal or send it via PayPal, because I just figured PayPal is the easiest way, because I use all of the proceeds I get from people for like equipment and the servers and stuff like that.
Is it a bank infrastructure? Are there so many banks, or you're close enough to a bank that people just transfer money among accounts?
Yeah, basically, yeah, and we have like online. Yeah, and that's the thing you talked with. I think you talked with Grubel about in the last time you were on the talk show. Like
was
the
it chip and pin and so forth, and all the bank fees. And...
Yeah, but over here, like if you belong to the same bank, there's not really a transfer fee, and you just do it through your browser. If you want to send money to another person. There's no, I've never seen a check. I'm 30 years old, and I've never seen one.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wait a minute. So, that's so different, because, see, the fees are so high. The banks, you were listening to this, right? The banks in America and in some other countries make so much of their money. If you want to do a wire transfer here, transfer between 2 banks, it can cost $15 to $25. And there's some new services. It's nuts. There's some new services. So my credit union has this thing that's perfect. That it's called Pay Other People Money, or POP Money, and it's a licensed service. Some group that they partner with. I know it's funny. Yeah. So it's licensed for something, and so I've seen this elsewhere. But so my credit union, on my personal account, but not my business account, they haven't expanded it yet. I can go there and I need to send $200 to my dad. I go there. And I pop in, if he gives me his bank information, like there's a routing number, and it's different every country, but there's a routing number which identifies the bank, and there's an account number which everybody has, right? So I punch that in, and they send him a text or something to verify it, and they plop the money in his account, and they don't charge me anything. And I think because it is a form of wire transfer, I don't know what they do, but it's free. And I think because it's cheaper for them to process than a check, it's worth it to them to offer this as a free service. But that's the only thing I've ever seen in America, besides PayPal or Dwolla or some of these online paying systems, that facilitate easy, free movement of money. And that's why Bitcoin is so interesting. But gosh, if you can move money around in Slovenia and you don't have to
Yeah, I mean, even
paying
if
the
it's
fees, then what's the motivation, right?
yeah, but no, but seriously, that's the thing. Everybody just has a debit card here. I mean, I have a credit card solely for buying plane tickets and like eBay. That's no, but that's the truth. I mean, that's the only reason I have one. Like, you know, and I guess more people have them now just because of iOS and Android, and because you can buy apps, and sort of the only way to do that. Because you know, I'm hoping that's gonna sort of spur like, I guess, credit card usage over here. You know, I mean, but over here to get a credit card, you have to, like, they look at your balance. You know, they just don't give it to anybody like over there. Because the impression I get in America, you just have to show up and they'll give you like $1,000 credit. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like over here. But you know, yeah, and that's an actual problem. I mean, I seriously, I get like a couple of emails, like every couple of months, I get like a couple of emails that just say, like, I want to give you money, I can't because I don't have a credit card, and it's an actual problem. And I don't know what to do. I just can't give them my bank account and just say, well, I'll just send it to my bank. That's weird, you know. That's like, yeah, and that, you see, and that those are the problems we sort of have to deal with. And yeah, that's why I like talking to you guys, because you just have, like, it's a different. I guess you gloss over some of this stuff, but it's interesting what comes out the other end, you know, when you can actually think about niches and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's especially, I mean, everybody, you know, Amazon and Apple have, I don't know what the numbers are now, but they probably each have, well, Apple must have hundreds of millions of credit card numbers, and Amazon must be well over 100 million. It was 70 million at some point, or accounts that people had cards attached to. And so it's a different thing. Like, you know, Kickstarter, it won't work in a country in which people couldn't either link in direct withdrawal from their bank or be able to charge with a credit card or a debit card or something. And so Kickstarter works here because everybody's like, oh, I'll put my credit card online and whatever. And in a country like yours, if people don't have them, I mean, you could have a Kickstarter there, but they'd have to link in with banks and be sure that people could put all their bank information in, and it's a different kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a pain, and the friction so much higher to just you know, to just get money from people is tougher here online. I mean, right? It's just tougher. And like we have like a bunch of, you know, like online retailers and stuff. And you basically just get the numbers you have to fill into the, you know, the bank's web thing, right, in the browser, and that's how you pay it. That's how. Like, wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like give the impression that nobody has a credit card, but it's a credit card is not something just like. It's not the basic thing you get from the bank over here. That's my point. Like, you have to seek it out. Right. Like, really seek it out. The only thing you get is a debit card, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And is a debit card, you can't use it, can you use the debit card as a credit card number? And in America, all the debit cards are essentially credit cards too.
Well, yeah, with PayPal you can't. In Slovenia, they just accept credit cards.
So you're poised for disruption. Is there a regulator who is preventing this from happening? Are there state interests that are being protected, like a PTT?
I have no idea why things are. Yeah, but the thing is, like, when I listen to you and Gruber talk about, and you just said like a bank to bank transfer, if it's not the same bank, it's like $15 or $20. Yeah. That's insane. I mean, here there is a fee. But I'm gonna just pull a number out of my head, but it's nowhere near €1. Like it's not, like you get a fee if you pay like the electricity bill with my bank. I think it's like 36 cents or something. Like if you do it online. And
we pay. I mean, that's the thing is we pay a fee on the credit card size. We're paying 2 to 3% per transaction. It's just hidden in the transaction, right? So we are paying. If I have $100 credit card transaction, $3 of that plus, and maybe even more if you carry all the overhead, I'm paying $3. I just don't see it. It's an included charge in the price of how the price of goods are calculated, and in your case, it's an explicit thing. You're paying ostensibly less because it's interbank instead of going through a network and so forth. It's very interesting. I had no idea. I mean, not that didn't think Slovenia has a modern banking infrastructure, but it seems like because of the internet, I have made the bad assumption that, you know, any place in Europe at least was going to have a similar infrastructure because of, like, you know, when you go to Sardinia or something, what do? Do you have to get a credit card when you go?
You can withdraw money from an ATM there with your debit card.
Oh, so it
That's
does.
it.
Okay.
And they do,
Wow.
but you see, it's not the same as a credit. It's kind of
It just
hard to
doesn't.
explain.
No, but you have to go to an ATM. You go to a bank machine. You can't. But if you want to buy something from a merchant, you can't hand over the card. You have to go
Well,
to a
if
bank
it's
machine. Get local cards.
well, that's gotten better with the. I think Mastercard has the debit card version is Maestro. I think it's called. So any place that has that, you can actually pay with the card. Yeah.
But it's treated like a debit transaction over their network, though. Probably if it doesn't.
Yeah,
work.
probably. Yeah.
That is very interesting. Well, because I mean, that's the whole. Well, isn't that the whole? Is Slovenia part of? It's not part of the EU, is it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
It is. Okay, right. So, are you using euro in Slovenia? I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
So that's bizarre. So you're part of a banking system in which everybody else in the euro system just about is going to have credit cards and whatever, and you guys are bereft. That's funny.
Yeah, but no, I mean, you can get a credit card. It's not like, just not a lot of people do because there's no, I don't know what the incentive is to get one, except for online stuff.
It would
and plane
cost more to
tickets.
do everything. So the banks are giving you, the banks are giving you an incentive to not get a credit card. But that's weird because most places we have this issue. Part of it is when you're doing bank transfers, you have to have the money. In America, we're horribly indebted, right? We have, and that's because of credit cards. The average household has, I don't know what it is after the economic slowdown, but the average household has, is it $15,000? There's some very large number, and people then turn to home equity because home equity, the home equity loans were cheaper. So your home would have appreciated in value during the run-up in the 2000s, and you take $100,000 out and feel like this was free money. Then the crash happens, and your house is suddenly worth below your total loan value, and you're paying money on it, and you can't sell your house, you can't refinance your house. But that shifted money from credit card debt into essentially increasing your home debt or what you borrowed against your home. But I think it's shifted back because home value went down. So people have this massive, we have credit cards partly for convenience and largely to maintain high interest debt. And I'm surprised that Slovenian banks aren't trying to. Maybe you actually have a good regulator.
Oh,
no.
do not
Well, I was going to
no.
say, but usually most places you can pay 20% interest on a credit card in America.
Yeah, that's just,
Which should be illegal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I'm surprised that in a country in which they don't. I mean, it's just there's so much money to be made. I'm surprised that no one's figured out how to do it.
Well, I'm gonna cut that part out. No, but and that's an actual that's an actual problem. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah, because people just don't have them. I mean, the debit cards here they have the chip and the pin, and you can withdraw money and pay with it like most places that has a master. But that is not a credit card.
Right.
That is linked to a bank account where like money is deposited. Mm-hmm. It's not like a credit card where you just it's the number on there is imaginary. The bank just gives you a number basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's insane. Yeah, it's insane, and that's why. Like every time I get a new PayPal notification that the listeners sort of supported the podcasts we do, I just I do a little dance basically. It's that's always that makes my week usually. So okay, now we're talking about me now, and this is not supposed to. Yeah,
I'm fascinated. This is part of I'm a reporter. I ask all these questions.
Yeah, but you see, that's why when I listen to the English podcasts, I just sometimes I'm just shaking my head there. The problems, you guys really do have first world problems. Basically.
Yeah, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize we had it that good. Good gravy.
Yeah, no, but honestly, I don't really see that there's a downside with people not having credit cards because it generally means maybe you spend pretty much the amount you have. I get the bank does give you you can overdraw your balance even on a debit card. They do give you that, but they sort of are kind of careful. But the banking situation here is I'm effed up. That's how I'm gonna say it because we have this big national bank that gave out this ludicrous loans to people during the run-up to 2008, and now everything basically fell apart, and that's why our economy is just barely. It's not even alive. It's pretty grim here, economy-wise.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. That's fun.
Yeah.
But that's odd. That's what's odd is that you'd think credit cards would be a huge product that was pushed, but everyone's leery because. It extends more credit, which makes things worse if there's not the credit, if the people default. Because we have that. We have huge default rates on mortgages and everything here too. So,
Yeah, you see, that's what happens when you have 2 million people. Things get weird because, the usual rules sort of, at least that's how I see it. I'm speaking outside my comfort zone now, but we don't get all of the benefits, I guess, of I'm going to say the Western world. But even we don't get a lot of the crap as well, We sort of, it works both ways, I think. And it's worked out pretty well until about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. That it really went I'm not going to swear again. Let's just forget our economy. Okay, I do have a couple of more questions.
Okay, that's great, Tom. It's okay.
I can just see you're going to do research now, right?
This is very interesting.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is Jeopardy. Which is a thing. I don't know how many people that are going to listen to this here. I'm guessing they do know what Jeopardy is, but I was trying to find an old link if we had a licensed version of that game show here, and I don't think so. I think it never no TV station bought the license and made our own version.
Yeah, because it's a weird thing. No one would ever want to watch Jeopardy outside of a country in which it was made because the questions wouldn't make any sense anywhere else. I think it may still be shown in Canada. I think it was shown in Australia for a little bit also, a number of years ago for a few seasons. It was syndicated there. But yeah, it's a very particular thing. It's like The Weakest Link. It's like the questions in Weakest Link on the UK would make no sense in the US.
Yeah, but you see, we did have The Weakest Link.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And we had Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And we also had that, I guess, of the big franchises. But yeah, Jeopardy, I guess, never came. So I'm just going to recap here and just tell me if I'm wrong at any point here. So the show, you basically answer questions and you have money and you basically bet that money. And if you get the questions right, you make more money. That's pretty much the gist, right? I mean, sort of.
Yeah, you answer. Yeah, the game mechanics are pretty straightforward. There's a board full of questions, or they're called clues. They have dollar amounts, and there are some wild cards where you can, if you get the wild card, you can bet up to the top amount that's currently on the board, or up to the entire amount in your kind of bank account that you currently are maintaining during the game. And then there's a final round. So there's 2 rounds of that. And the first round is one set of dollar values. The second round is twice as much. And then there's a final round with there's sort of a sudden death question with 30 seconds that everyone gets to answer and can bet up to the total amount that they have at that point in the game.
And that's actual money, right? I mean, that you do get the money you win, right?
They have tournaments they have college, armed forces, kids, teens, and champion tournaments, which are kind of their special events, during which people are guaranteed fees at different levels, and the money is sort of fake. But during the regular season, which is, I think, about 2/3 of the year, the regular season, it's actual money. And I know that's funny. When you reach the end of the game, one thing that wasn't for a long time promoted at the game is only the winner of the game receives the money on the board that they won. And then there's a second place prize of $2,000 and a third place prize of $1,000. And there can be ties also. You can have 2 or 3 winners at the end if they have the exact dollar amount. But so the second and third place people don't lose everything, and they don't get the money that's on the board for them. They get these fees. Which is great. So people walk away with something. You have to pay your own airfare and hotel, and so even if you come in third place, you still get $1,000, which would cover all of that or more from most of the country to get to Los Angeles.
Okay, so and you're a 2-time champion. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I went down. So they tape 5 programs a day, typically back to back. So we'll do like 10 shows over 2 days, and with some small gaps in between. So you get there, and I was there on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And on Tuesday, I watched 3 games. Then my name was called. I went up on stage, and I played and won 1 game. Then the next went off and slept, came back, and then played 1 more game and lost. And on TV, that was a Thursday, Friday, and Monday about 2 months later, the way it was.
Okay, so yeah, it's all pre-taped and stuff, way in advance, I guess.
Yeah, they have to do that.
Oh yeah, because I sort of know I've seen I've seen the SNL sketches and stuff, but I've never actually seen an hour. It's an hour show, a half an hour. I don't know.
I don't know why. I don't know. It's a 30-minute show. They usually do it back to back with Wheel of Fortune, which I find Horrible.
Oh, we used to have Wheel of Fortune. You see, that's another one we used to have, yeah.
Oh, that's easier, right? Because then you can change, say you have a licensed version, you have different words, but it's more straightforward. Jeopardy is an intensive program. It used to have, I think, 25 million regular viewers, and now it's down to 8 or 9. But it puts out, they make a lot of money off that show in syndication, and it's intensive. They have people writing year round, thousands of questions, and stuff gets thrown out, and some of it's timely, so it has to be up to date. And you see all these writers sitting out front when you're sitting there and you're on the show, and that's just a fraction of the people working on it. So it's a very intense show to write. It's a very specific format to get questions that fit in the squares, that can be answered, that most people at home will know, and that most of the contestants will know, but won't seem too easy at the same time. It's a very particular thing.
Yeah, and it's been running for a while now. This is it's decades now. Right?
It's had 3 or 4 versions. There was even a rock and roll Jeopardy at one point. I know,
Okay.
but I think it was originally in the 60s. There was a great host, Art Fleming. I think. Art Fleming, I think, was the original host, which as a kid in America, I watched him. Then it was off the air for a bit, came back in, and I think it had another version and this rock and roll version. And then it's been running from 1984 to the present with Alex Trebek as the host, 30 years. And he's in his 70s. And he's been the host, in thousands and thousands of programs. They've had thousands of people come through. It's a weird cultural phenomenon. And so very few people I know still watch it because it's only on network television. You cannot get it except on broadcast TV. You can't watch it streamed online. You can't buy episodes. You can't get it on DVD. It's a very particular phenomenon here where you have syndicated television programs where essentially 100% of the revenue comes from TV stations paying the program syndicator to run it, and then the TV stations run advertising against the program, and they keep the advertising proceeds, and they may split even some of the advertising with the show as well. And so there's no motivation for them to make it accessible. They're high enough in demand that they only appear in this format.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. It's a syndicated
weird,
show.
isn't it? It sounds really out of.
It's a game show. That's even more bizarre, I think, because you can get away with what was that show, Renegade and stuff, like the crappy action shows that were syndicated, or Walker Texas Ranger.
Yeah, exactly. And those would eventually go into reruns. You'd see them again, but this is a sequential show. Every episode's different. Like, why would you rerun Jeopardy? They are now showing some classic episodes that are particularly interesting on a thing called Crackle. It's an online.
That's Sony's thing, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. And it's Sony Pictures Sony Television. I forget is the producer of Jeopardy or the owner of Jeopardy.
Okay.
But so Crackle, you can go and see some. They're doing this Battle of the Decades is aired now with people from each of the decades of Jeopardy's run are coming back for this sort of super tournament, and they're airing the old episodes. You can actually stream those or watch those maybe on a cable channel as well, so you can see what these performers are like. But yeah, it's one of these weird things. And I asked people when I was on the show, I was asking some of the staff I only deal with, they keep a separation, so I'm only talking to the people who deal with the contestants, but they're part of the show. And so when is this going to be streamed? Like, when are you going to make this available? And it's like the model still works. Like, there's enough TV viewers and enough money that it doesn't make sense to break it. And although Jeopardy, I think if Jeopardy were streamed, I think it would have a vast watching population, but they can't monetize that. They don't want to steal viewers from local television stations because that's where the money comes from. If they stream, the local TV stations would cancel the show, and then how would they replace that revenue? So this is a captive market, and very intentionally so.
Oh, this is like coming full circle with the magazines.
I know. Scarcity is an amazing thing. Attention and scarcity are the two contending factors in all media. Is people have a finite amount of attention, and if you make something they really want scarce, then you can charge more money for it. And if you make something abundant, then you may get more people, but then you go from this is always the thing in America we talk about turning dollars into pennies when you go from print revenue for a publication into online. Is your eyeballs are worth less because the medium attracts less intense attention and it's measured more precisely, and so the results tend to be more brutal. So if you're getting $1, in one scenario, you're going to get a penny online. And I think the same is true for TV syndication, is they know that people want to watch Jeopardy. They have a dedicated audience, and if they only make it available in one form, they have to push people to broadcast TV, which means people see the ads and the advertisers are happy.
Yeah.
course, we skip.
Oh man,
I watch it with my boys, and we fast forward.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, TiVo and stuff, yeah. But like, I wish I could forward like 15 years into the future and just see how all this shakes out. Because the dollars and pennies thing, that has to like work itself out somehow. I just have no idea how. Like that's the. Yeah, okay, we're gonna go into that again, and we're not. We're gonna. Yeah, I have one more thing I wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, it's more like maybe even more of a compliment than a question. But the new Disruptors.
Yes,
is a show you do, which I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, thank you very much.
Like, yeah, basically the main reason I wanted to have you on, and it's the second to last thing I want to talk to you about. So I'm just going to say, just plug the show for the people that are listening to this, so they'll know what it's about. And I do urge everybody to give it a listen. But just plug. This is don't be ashamed to just purely plug the podcast.
Excellent. Well, I would be like, well, it's what the show is about is it's funny. I launched the show called The New Disruptors, and then people shortly after that were starting to say, "Oh, I hate the word disruption. It's overused." I'm like, gosh darn it, I timed this just wrong. But I didn't want to be pretentious, but I wanted to say these are people who are disrupting every kind of field of creative endeavor and creative production. And I thought New Disruptors was sort of a good broad thing so I could sweep other people under it. It's like, it's anyone who creates something. It's artists, musicians, product designers, programmers, bookmakers, printers, anybody who's doing anything interesting in the realm of making something new that people want to consume in some form or enjoy, or even from the community standpoint, participate in. And so I'm focusing on the fields in which all of those things had gatekeepers before, and now you can reach people directly, or you use what I like to call a facilitator. I don't know if that's the right term, but they're like thin intermediaries. They're people who. So here's a great example. I'm talking to the filmmakers. An upcoming episode is the guys who made a movie about comic strip and comic strip artists called Stripped. That's coming out April 1st.
The Bill Watterson did the art for it, right?
Exactly. Yes, it's
yes.
wonderful.
Okay.
Right. So this film I've seen a press screener of it. It's a wonderful film. It's coming out April 1st, and they'll be on the program. We're airing their episode a few days before, and so they're distributing through iTunes, which is a kind of which iTunes is weird. It's not a gatekeeper in the way the old gatekeepers were, but they take a big chunk of money and they are very picky. So they are a bit of a gatekeeper, but they're not exclusive. And that was the old thing. Like, a lot of gatekeepers were not just picky, controlled you creatively, maybe owned you, and took a big chunk of your revenue. And they controlled scarcity, right? So you can't get a movie into the theaters unless you go through all these hoops, and there's no other way to see a movie. And this was true with books. You have to get into the bookstores. You have to get in the magazine stand. You have to get into the record store. All of these things involved a lot of people and all these gatekeepers that controlled scarcity to increase value. So the show is about the idea that not only can you reach people directly, like Jonathan Colton can sell music from his site, but what facilitates him selling that as well is not only did he build an audience, and there's all the interesting things about him, is that something like PayPal or Stripe or even credit card companies allowing you to take credit card charges online and only charge you 3%. Like, all of these things led to Jonathan Colton being able to make a living from his career. And Kickstarter being able to facilitate the collection of money in these rewards-based systems. So these Stripped filmmakers, they're going to use so they'll launch on iTunes to get a bigger boost, right? But then they're going to go to, I forget if it's the second or third day, they'll be on VHX, X like X-ray. And VHX.com is a DRM-free distribution platform with streaming and downloads. And you get an account, but then you can download a link and you download the film. And there's none of this, like, you can only do it in certain places, at times this country, the moon has to be in alignment. It's like, no, it's totally open. And VHX takes, I forget what it is, it's a very small percentage of each sale. And so VHX is as much a facilitator of Stripped being a thing to be distributed as Kickstarter was to allow Stripped to raise the money, as Final Cut Pro is as a way for or whatever, they maybe use a different tool. Final Cut Pro is a way to make a film, as all of these as Twitter is a way for them to find people. Like, all of these things conspire. So all the tools are now available, and many of them are very cheap or free, or they want a sliver of a percentage, where before none of the tools were available, or they were very expensive, and everyone wanted 10%, 20%, 50%, and to tell you what to do. So the whole show is about what happens when you can express your creativity to the full extent that you want to without someone telling you you don't meet what we want to do. And rather they want to fill the pipe. So I talk about this a lot about the new intermediaries, these thin intermediaries. They want to keep their pipe as full as possible. VHX, their business model does better if they have 1 billion films available than if they have 1 million. Yeah. And it doesn't cost them more. There's storage costs and whatever, but it doesn't. Kickstarter maybe at some extent, if they had 1 million projects, it would be worse than 100,000. But they don't put an upper bound on it. The ability for people to put time and effort into making a campaign is the upper bound on Kickstarter. Who else was I talking to recently? It was that thing about this is what drives telecommunications networks: the dumb pipe versus the smart pipe. A dumb pipe is data goes over the pipe, and the interests of the operator is to keep the pipe as full as possible because that's how they make their money, is a full pipe. The smart pipe is you control the ends and you make everything as scarce as possible so you can force people to buy your stuff at the ends. And so the telecom metaphor works even in this whole area of like art and commerce. And so every week I've got somebody different on, and I try not to focus on any particular area of creativity, and I do try to get these intermediaries on. So I've had a Kickstarter CEO was on, and we talked about that. But I've also had Jonathan Colton, or I had who recently Dylan McConis, who's a cartoonist in Portland, is on an upcoming episode, and she's done all kinds of interesting stuff through Kickstarter and running her own career. And it doesn't always have to be a crowdfunding thing. It's how does someone take control of their career, and where do the technological tools aid them in doing it, as opposed to hinder them or become a preventative from them doing it.
Okay, okay. I'm just
that's the show.
Yeah, that's the show. No, but seriously, I'm a huge fan. So I just want people to know about the show, basically. Yeah. Okay, so I do this thing with every guest where I ask about their hardware and software. So I'm just gonna ask you. Your computer and your phone and your tablet.
That's funny. Well, I'm an all Mac guy, not an all Apple guy, not by being ornery about it. I'm not a fanboy. This stuff works for me, and I've used Windows, and I have Linux. I mean, I do have a bunch of virtual Linux servers running where all my servers deal with, but I've got a Mac Mini. I had a Mac, what was it? I don't even know what it was. I had one of the cheese grater models. It was a Mac Pro 2007 model, and it would not take Lion. It refused to update to Lion, and it drove me nuts. I have these weird crashes, and the hard drive failed in the middle of it. And finally, I'm like, this is 2012, so it's a 5-year-old machine. And finally, I'm like, I do not have the time to do this. So I go, I'm like, there's an Apple store nearby. I'm like, I just need to buy a Mini to replace it. I don't want to get a new Mac Pro. They're too expensive. And I realize, I look up the specs of the Mini. I look at all the benchmarks and everything, and I realized the Mac Mini that I bought for maybe $1,300 is more powerful than this 56-pound Mac Pro that's 5 years old. I'm like, fine. And it also could take more memory and came with a bigger, and I'm like, and it's 2 pounds and it's 1/16 the volume. So, and what's the irony, of course, is a couple months later, Apple released I think I had the very last Mac Pro, or the very earliest one you could run Lion on, and there were clearly incompatibilities. And 2 months later, they released an update, some dot release, didn't say anything about it. Suddenly it would take Lion. So, because I was installing it, I sold it to a friend. It cost almost $200 to ship cross country.
Yeah, I can imagine.
This device that was, I forget if I gave it to him for free. I don't know. I think it was $200. I gave it to him for $200, including shipping. Maybe I got $50 out of it because he needed it. It was useful, and I knew he'd use it for stuff. But and I've got an iPhone 5S, which I wasn't planning to buy, but my wife's older phone was dying, and we were qualified for subsidies. So we're still waiting. It's a pain to switch. We have some SIM issues here, so we've got I've had the 5S for a while. She's a dying 4S, and she's going to get my old iPhone 5 as soon as we can get. We have to go to a store and get them to do some reprogramming of the SIMs.
The SIM cards. Okay.
Yeah, they're a pain. It's also, I think I have a micro SIM and she has a mini SIM or something, nano SIM or something. So we have to do that. And what else do I have? I don't know. I've got 2 iPads. So I've got 2 children, ages 6, almost 7, and 9, and so I've got all this hand-me-down equipment. So they've got an old iPhone, a relatively recent iPod Touch, and an older iPod Touch. I think we've retired the iPhone now because it's sold. It won't run things. They've got a hand-me-down iPad 2 that I replaced with I got a gift of an iPad 4. So I have an iPad 4, and we've got now, like, I think 3 working phones lying around, 2 in use. One we've got to swap. So I think and my wife has a laptop. My kids have a laptop because an old one they were using just died, so we decided to get them. They need enough for schoolwork and other stuff. So we have, I think, at this point, we have 4 working computers, 5 iPhones in different states of function, 2 iPod Touches, and 2 tablets.
Okay, that's
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. But
I'm a technology writer, so there's always a hand.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, you're a tech writer. I am one too, so I sort of understand that. So,
normally I would sell stuff off, and like I didn't plan to buy a new iPad, and I got one as a gift from Mr. Marco Arman, who's a nice guy. The Christmas that I started, he sent me one because I didn't have a Retina iPad, so that was a nice gift on his part. And it's great. I mean, it's a wonderful machine, and then it gave us an extra. But yeah, it's we actually at one level have relatively little technology in the house. We had a 20-something inch HD TV. It was a 7020p, and recently realized my wife and my eyes have gotten bad enough in the 10 years since we bought that. I'm like, we need a new television. We're going to go crazy. We bought a 32-inch television, which in America is like saying you bought a 5-inch television.
Yeah, it's the same over here. I think, yeah.
We tell people, we bought, I think 32 inches might be the smallest 1080p size you can get. And it just
I think
fits
that's true, yeah.
It just fits in the cabinet we have. And I'm delighted because I forget what it was. It was under $400. It's IPS, so we can move around. It's so much brighter, and it's so much crisper, and it's got Netflix built in. And I'm like, but we lasted 10 plus years until we said, okay, we need something slightly bigger and brighter for our
on a
eyeballs.
10-year-old LCD TV. That's... Yeah,
I'm delighted by it.
Yeah, Glenn, my hat's off, man.
We try. I mean, I have a 5-year-old Mac Pro. I try to not spend. My wife, in this household, we say my wife is the early rejecter. I'm an early adopter. She's the early rejecter. And I'll say, honey, don't you think we need? She's like, I'm like, oh, you're right. We don't need it. Or I'll say, Apple just came out with a new Mac update, and she's like, great, tell me about that in 6 to 8 months when it's at the .2 or .3 release. And I say, you're the smart one here, not me.
Yeah, smart woman. Yeah, I was about to say that. Okay, so I usually ask about software, but since you do use an iPad, I usually ask like for like tablet-specific apps, and like the ones you actually use. If you could name 5 like you actually use, not just the flavor of the month stuff. So
that's funny, because it's weird. I recently had to create a folder because there's things that I use all the time and I forget to go to them. I have a weird set of apps I use. So I mean, I use the my own app, I will say, but I'm in the New York Times app all the time. I resisted subscribing because I think their fees are too high, but I eventually gave in. I read the New York Times, I feel like, all day on it. I use Google Maps. Apple Maps still is not great for me. I use Tweetbot. I live in Tweetbot. And I also I use a Fitbit. And I'm in that app regularly because I want to see where I'm at in terms of steps and so forth. It's a really nice little app. And then I'm trying to think what my number 5 app is. I have to look at my I'm on the iPad. I think what I have launched a lot of the time when I'm on there is I don't use it that often anymore. I use it to view things and test things, but I'm either on a laptop or my iPhone most of the time when I'm like consuming something. But when I'm on an iPad, the Comixology app, I'm a big comic book fan. So that's kind of like, I think Comixology is probably launched is like 30 to, like if you excluded Safari, it's probably like 30 to 50% of my iPad usage is Comixology. I could just have a Comixology tablet and it would be fine.
Okay. And then my last question, which is also always the same. If you had to pick one piece of tech that's made the biggest impact on your life, I know it's like a hippie question, but bear with me. Like, what would that be? If you had to pick one piece of tech.
Well, I'm going to give you a funny answer.
Okay. Well, I've gotten funny answers, so that's not a problem at all. So
the biggest piece of tech is I had a blocked artery that I found out about last year. I have a stent in my heart, and it prevented me from having to have open heart surgery. And it's a wonderful bit of technology. It's about 25 years old, and they put a stent. I'm calling it a stent. Yeah, wait, now I have to make sure I'm using the right term. I sometimes call it a shunt. That's not right. A shunt is totally different. A stent. Yes, it is a stent. Just check it. So this is one marvelous piece of technology. It is a drug-coated stent. It's you know what this is? I don't know if this is. You must. I'm sure you have the technology, but you may not have heard of the term.
No, I've never heard the term stent. So,
a stent, it's a specialized thing. And if you don't have heart condition, you won't find out about it. And so I had a clogged artery, which is a whole other story. It's not, my health is actually very good. I had cancer, about 16 years ago, and had, as part of it, radiation therapy, and part of it exposed my heart, even though they build a shield around it. And when you have radiation therapy for cancer and your heart is in the field, it's possible you will develop early onset heart disease. Unfortunately, mine was very treatable, and after some issues was discovered. So I go into the hospital, and they're doing a treadmill test, and they say, we don't like the results of this test. You need to get a catheter inserted in you, and we're going to do an angiogram. We want to take pictures of your heart, and we may need to put a stent in it. I'm like, I showed up thinking I was going to be running on a treadmill. So they do all this, and the stent it's a metal sleeve. It's an expandable metal sleeve. And they have there's something called balloon angioplasty, which is an old technique too, where they slide a catheter into your vein. They take pictures first, and then they slide this thing in, and they inflate it, and it opens up the vein. It pushes all the fat and plaque and stuff off to the sides, and it can prevent it. But that's one technique. A stent, they put this metal sleeve over the balloon. They slide it in, and it expands. And now I have a metal tunnel.
You're joking. You have a metal
I have a metal tunnel in my heart. It's a drug coated. Well, you go read about this because you're a young man. You will understand about this as you get older. This is one of the most miraculous things. And after it happened, I tweeted. I didn't live tweet, but they don't fully anesthetize you for it. I was awake and slightly sedated, so I could see what's going on. It doesn't hurt because it's all inside your veins. You have no nerves there.
Yeah, but you have like a steel vein now. That's awesome.
A steel vein. It's awesome, and it's not a cure. What it does is it opens up the vein and it will stay there forever. But it gives me the time to make any other changes. So the drug changes I need to make, or lifestyle, or food, or whatever, exercise. And I was actually doing a lot fine. It was the radiation therapy that really the hangout. And I have a very good prognosis. They're very happy about the response. But it's a great piece of technology. It was put into heavy use starting about 25 years ago. It's sometimes overused. Like there are other techniques that can be used. The younger George Bush just got one put in, and a lot of second guessers are like, he didn't need a stent. He should have done. The doctor is over whatever.
But that's a metal vein. It's awesome.
Great. It's great. It's like do the thing, the Chinese finger trap.
Oh yeah,
It's just like that. You pull it out, and it's connected so that it opens up it's got a mesh in it. So they open it out, and it extends, and it keeps that. It keeps the tunnel from collapsing, and it's great. And so my heart heals around it, and it's drug coated so that it resists platelets and from sticking. And I'm taking a bunch of medication, some long term and some short, that prevent that from getting clogged. But it's not that I wouldn't be alive without it, but I probably would have had, if this were 25 years ago, they would have opened up my chest and done vein grafts and God knows what, and I would have been out of commission for months and recovered, and I probably would have never been quite the same again. Right. And instead, I was in something called a cath lab, not an operating room, for 90 minutes. 60 of it they took pictures, 30 was inserting the stent, and that's it. And I went home a couple days later, and I felt fine almost immediately.
That's awesome, man. That's
my favorite technology now.
Yeah, sold. Okay. Oh man, Glenn, thanks for doing this.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, this is it. This is the show. Tole je bila 66. epizoda Aparatusa. Glena najdete na Twitterju pod @glennf, jaz sem na Twitterju @anzt. In še enkrat, če imate šanso, lahko Aparatus tudi finančno podprete, to naredite tako, da greste na aparatus.si/podpri. Vsak evro, ki ga dobimo, uporabimo za to, da se nakup oprema oziroma serverji in vse ostalo, tako da res vsak evro prav pride. Tako da vsem, ki ste pa že dali denar, pa še enkrat ful iskrena hvala. Evo, to je do naslednjega tedna to. Čau.